What happens to the proteins present in an egg when it is cooked?
The white of an egg is rich in the protein albumin. When subjected to high heat, the bonds that form the three-dimensional structure of albumin are irreversibly changed. This causes the clear, jelly-like consistency of the egg to become firm and white. This process is known as protein denaturation. Proteins may also be denatured by a change in the pH value of the fluid surrounding them or by the addition of chemical detergents. Most denaturation is irreversible, however. Scientists can use partial or temporary denaturation to control the action of enzymes used in experiments.
What tests can be used to determine the presence of lipids?
A very simple test to determine the presence of lipids is the grease spot test. Place a drop of solution on an unglazed, clean sheet of brown paper. Once the liquid evaporates, a spot containing lipids will remain visible. The Sudan 4 test also tests for lipids. It is based on the ability of lipids to selectively absorb pigments in fat-soluble dyes.
What roles do enzymes actually play?
Enzymatic reactions can build up or break down specific molecules. The specific molecule an enzyme works on is the substrate. The molecule that results from the reaction is the product.
What is the most expensive spice in the world?
The world's most expensive spice is saffron. The spice was highly sought after by the ancient civilizations of Egypt, Assyria, Phoenicia, Persia, Crete, Greece, and Rome. The term saffron comes from the Arabic word za'afaran, meaning yellow. The spice is obtained from the delicate stigmas of an autumn crocus. Crocus sativus, a species native to eastern Mediterranean countries and Asia Minor. Crocus sativus is propagated by corms. The blooming period for the crocus is approximately 2 weeks, after which the flowers must be picked while they are in full bloom and before any signs of wilting. Once picked, the 3-part stigmas are removed from the petals before the petals wilt. This is a time-consuming process that can only be done by hand as the stigmas are very fragile. Then the stigmas are roasted and sold either as whole threads, whole stigmas, or powder. In order to harvest 1 pound 0.45 kilograms of the spice, between 75,000 and 100,000 flowers must be picked. Approximately 4,000 stigmas yield 1 ounce, 28 gr, of the spice. In 1998 the retail price of saffron was approximately $240 per ounce. $8.50 per gram, confirming its place as the world's most costly spice.
What fungus plays an important role in human organ transplantation?
The soil-inhabiting fungus Talipocladium inflatum is the source of cyclosporin, a medication that suppresses the immune reactions that cause organ transplant rejections. Cyclosporin does not cause the undesirable side effects that other immune-suppressing medications do. This remarkable drug became available in 1979, making it possible to resume organ transplants, which had essentially been abandoned. As a result of cyclosporin, successful organ transplants are almost commonplace today.
What factors contribute to the spread of emerging infectious diseases?
Some of the factors contributing to the spread of emerging infectious diseases include environmental changes, unwarranted use and abuse of antibiotics, and the prevalence of modern transportation, which allows diseases to spread in wide geographic areas very rapidly.
What is the most common blood cell?
Red blood cells, also known as erythrocytes, are the most common blood cells. A milliliter, ml, of blood contains approximately 5 billion red blood cells. The average person has a total of 25 trillion red blood cells in their bloodstream. Red blood cells are very small, it would take a string of 2,000 red blood cells to circle a pencil.
What is TIGR?
TIGR is the Institute for Genomic Research, a non-profit private research institute founded in 1992 by Craig Venter, 1948, and headquartered in Rockville, Maryland. Its specific interests are in the structural, functional, and comparative analysis of genomes and gene products. TIGR collaborates with institutions around the world. For example, it worked with the International Livestock Research Institute in Nairobi, Kenya, to determine the genome of the parasite that causes East Coast fever, a fatal disease of cattle in sub-Saharan Africa.
Can cells be used as factories?
Humans have been using cells as factories for millennia. The production of cheese, yogurt, beer, and wine relies on the ability of individual cells to produce specific products, such as lactic acid and ethanol. More recently, scientists have been able to manipulate cell genes so that cells will produce substances that have little relation to their normal function. Examples of products from bioengineered cell factories include the production of human insulin to treat diabetics and factor VIII, a naturally produced clotting factor in humans, for hemophiliacs.
Who was the first to postulate that microorganisms are the cause of disease?
Robert Koch, 1843 to 1910, was the first to identify that various microorganisms are the cause of disease. His four basic criteria of bacteriology, known as Koch's postulates, are still considered fundamental principles of bacteriology. Koch was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1905 for his research on tuberculosis.
How does the mass number of an element differ from the atomic number?
The mass number is the sum of the number of protons and neutrons in the nucleus of an element. Using helium as an example, the mass number of helium is 4. As it has 2 protons and 2 neutrons in its nucleus. Since it has only 2 protons, the atomic number of helium is 2. When the atomic number changes, i.e., the number of protons changes, the result is a different element.
What are the steps of the scientific method?
Research scientists follow these steps. 1. State a hypothesis. 2. Design an experiment to prove the hypothesis. 3. Assemble the materials and set up the experiment. 4. Do the experiment and collect data. 5. Analyze the data using quantitative methods. 6. Draw conclusions. 7. Write up and publish the results.
What are the different kinds of mutations?
Mutations may be germinal, occurring within the gametic cells, or somatic, occurring within any non-sex cell. The difference is that a germinal mutation will affect all cells of an individual, while a somatic mutation will only affect those cells produced by mitosis from the original mutated cell. There are various categories of mutations. A point mutation is a change in a single DNA base. A deletion occurs when information is removed from a gene. An insertion occurs when extra DNA is added to a gene. Frameshift mutations occur when one or two bases are either added or deleted.
Do male mosquitoes bite humans?
No. Male mosquitoes live on plant juices, sugary saps, and liquids arising from decomposition. They do not have a biting mouth that can penetrate human skin as female mosquitoes do. In some species, the females, who lay as many as 200 eggs, need blood to lay their eggs. These are the species that bite humans and other animals.
What were the smallest and largest dinosaurs?
Compsognathus, a carnivore from the late Jurassic period, 131 million years ago, was about the size of a chicken and measured, at most, 35 in, 89 centimeters, from the tip of its snout to the tip of its tail. The average weight was about 6.8 pounds 3 kilograms, but individuals could be as much as 15 pounds 6.8 kilograms. The largest species for which a whole skeleton is known is Brachiosaurus. A specimen in Humboldt Museum in Berlin measures 72.75 feet 22.2 meters long and 46 feet 14 meters high. It weighed an estimated 34.7 tons, 31,480 kilograms. Brachiosaurus was a four-footed, plant-eating dinosaur with a long neck and tail and lived from about 155 to 131 million years ago.
What is a polytene chromosome?
When DNA replication takes place without subsequent cell division, polytene chromosomes may result. These are giant chromosomes comprised of multiple chromatids. Identical chromosome copies, arranged together like strands of a large cable. They are commonly found in the salivary glands of the fruit fly, Drosophila melanogaster, and are regions of active transcription.
What is meant by ecoterrorism?
Ecoterrorism is the term used to describe actions taken by individuals or organizations to prevent what may loosely be termed as environmental change. This change may be seen as the clear-cutting of forests for wood products or land for housing, or the use of genetically modified plants or animals for human consumption. Eco-terrorists are those who are willing to take violent and potentially harmful action in order to prevent these types of changes. Beginning in the 1980s, industrial sabotage such as tree spiking, the process of inserting metal spikes into trees so that they cannot be cut down by chainsaws, was used to prevent logging. However, tree spiking can seriously injure the loggers who are cutting down such trees. Eco-terrorists have also used arson as a tactic. In 1998, eco-terrorists burned down a major portion of a new ski resort in Colorado, which resulted in $12 million in damages.
What are succulents?
A group of more than 30 plant families including the amaryllis, lily, and cactus families 182 form what is known as the succulents, from the Latin term succulentus, meaning fleshy or juicy. Most members of the group are resistant to droughts as they are dry weather plants. Even when they live in moist, rainy environments, these plants need very little water.
What is a banyan tree?
The banyan tree, Ficus bengalensis. Native to tropical regions of Southeast Asia, is a member of the genus Ficus. It is a magnificent evergreen that can reach 100 feet 30.48 meters in height. As the massive limbs spread horizontally, the tree sends down roots that develop into secondary, pillar-like supporting trunks. Over a period of years, a single tree may spread to occupy as much as 2,000 feet 610 meters around its periphery.
How are birds related to dinosaurs?
Birds are essentially modified dinosaurs with feathers. Robert T. Bakker, 1945, and John H. Ostrom, 1928. Did extensive research on the relationship between birds and dinosaurs in the 1970s and concluded that the bony structure of small dinosaurs was very similar to Archaeopteryx. The first animal classified as a bird, but that dinosaur fossils showed no evidence of feathers. They proposed that birds and dinosaurs evolved from the same source.
Why is DNA such a stable molecule?
DNA is a stable molecule due to the stacking interaction between the adjacent base pairs in the helix and the hydrogen bonding between bases. This stability has allowed researchers to harvest DNA from extinct species.
How did Malthus influence Darwin?
Both Darwin and Wallace read the work of Thomas Malthus, 1766 to 1834, who in 1798 had published Essay on the Principle of Population. In it, Malthus argued that the reproductive rate of humans grows geometrically, far outpacing the available resources. This means that individuals must compete for a share of the resources in order to survive in what has become known as the struggle for existence. Darwin and Wallace incorporated this idea as part of natural selection, that is, adaptations that made for a more successful competitor would be passed on to subsequent generations, leading to greater and greater efficiency.
How did the original Celsius temperature scale differ from the one in use now?
In 1742, the Swedish astronomer Anders Celsius, 1701 to 1744, Set the freezing point of water at 100 degrees Celsius and the boiling point of water at 0 degrees Celsius. It was Carolus Linnaeus, 1707 to 1778, who reversed the scale. But a later textbook attributed the modified scale to Celsius, and the name has remained.
What is taxol?
Taxol is a drug used to treat ovarian cancer. It freezes cancer cells early in the process of cell division. When the cells are unable to divide, they eventually die. Taxol is obtained from the bark of the Pacific yew, Taxus brevifolia. A gymnosperm that grows in the Pacific Northwest. Because the Pacific yew is a small tree that grows slowly and is not found in abundance, researchers have synthesized taxol.
What compounds are important in the coloration of flowers?
Color is one of the most conspicuous features of angiosperm flowers. All flower colors are produced by a small number of pigments. Many red, orange, or yellow flowers owe their color to the presence of carotenoid pigments similar to those that occur in leaves. The most important pigments in floral coloration are flavonoids. An important group of flavonoids, the anthocyanins, are major determinants of flower color. The three major anthocyanin pigments are, 1. Pelargonidin, red, 2. Cyanidin, violet, and 3. Delphinidin, blue. Related compounds, known as flavonols, are yellow, ivory, or white. Mixtures of these different pigments, together with changes in cellular pH, produce the entire range of flower color in the angiosperms.
What is eugenics?
Sir Francis Galton, 1822 to 1911, a cousin of Charles Darwin, founded eugenics. After reading Darwin's work on natural selection, Galton thought that the human species could be improved by artificial selection, the selective breeding for desirable traits. This method is often used in domesticated animals. In Galton's plan, those with desirable traits would be encouraged to have large families, while those with undesirable traits would be kept from breeding. However, Galton's theory overlooked two important points: the importance of environmental factors on phenotypic expression, and the difficulty of removing recessive traits from the gene pool. Recessive alleles can be passed from one individual to the next as part of a heterozygous genotype, thereby escaping detection for generations. Galton's work was enthusiastically adopted in both the United States and Europe. In the United States between 1900 and 1930, eugenics gave rise to changes in federal immigration laws and The passage of state laws requiring the sterilization of genetic defectives and certain types of criminals. In Europe, eugenics became a cornerstone of the Nazi movement.
Can human beings be cloned?
In theory, yes. There are, however, many technical obstacles to human cloning, as well as moral, ethical, philosophical, religious, and economic issues to be resolved before a human being could be cloned. At the present time, most scientists would agree that cloning a human being is unsafe under current conditions.
How long have leeches been used for medicinal purposes?
Leeches have been used in the practice of medicine since ancient times. During the 1800s, leeches were widely used for bloodletting because of the mistaken idea that body disorders and fevers were caused by an excess of blood. Leech collecting and culture were practiced on a commercial scale during this time. William Wordsworth's 1770–1850 poem The Leech Gatherer was based on this use of leeches.
Who introduced the gypsy moth into the United States?
In 1869, Professor Leopold Trevelled. 1827–1895, brought gypsy moth egg masses from France to Medford, Massachusetts. His intention was to breed the gypsy moth with the silkworm to overcome a wilt disease of the silkworm. He placed the egg masses on a window ledge, and evidently the wind blew them away. About 10 years later, these caterpillars were numerous on trees in that vicinity. And in 20 years, trees in eastern Massachusetts were being defoliated. In 1911, a contaminated plant shipment from Holland also introduced the gypsy moth to Massachusetts. These pests have now spread to 25 states, especially in the northeastern United States. Scattered locations in Michigan and Oregon have also reported occurrences of gypsy moth infestations. The gypsy moth, Porthitria dispar, lays its eggs on the leaves of oaks, birches, maples, and other hardwood trees. When the yellow hairy caterpillars hatch from the eggs, they devour the leaves in such quantities that the tree becomes temporarily defoliated. Sometimes this causes the tree to die. The caterpillars grow from 0.5 in, 3 mm, to about 2 in, 5.1 cm. Before they spin a pupa, in which they will metamorphose into adult moths.
What is cholesterol?
Cholesterol belongs to the subclass of lipids known as steroids. Steroids have a unique chemical structure. They are built from 4 carbon-laden ring structures that are fused together. The human body uses cholesterol to maintain the strength and flexibility of cell membranes. Cholesterol is also the molecule from which steroid hormones and bile acids are built.
What is meant by common origin?
The term common origin refers to the shared ancestors of the Darwin-Wallace theory. It explains the commonality we see among different species of birds, for example, blue jays, starlings, sparrows, and other birds share traits like beaks, wings, and general body structure that are of common origin.
What are the 2 major groups of angiosperms?
Angiosperms made up of the largest number of plant species. 240,000 are classified into 2 major groups, monocots and dicots. The description of monocots and dicots is based on the first leaves that appear on the plant embryo. Monocots have 1 seed leaf, while dicots have 2 seed leaves. There are approximately 65,000 species of monocots and 175,000 species of dicots. Orchids, bamboo, palms, lilies, grains, and many grasses are examples of monocots. Dicots include most trees that are non-coniferous, shrubs, ornamental plants, and many food crops.
What are the most important elements in living systems?
The most important elements in living systems include oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, sodium, chlorine, magnesium, and iron. These elements are essential to life due to their cellular function.
What was the first commercial use of genetic engineering?
Commercial recombinant DNA technology was first used to produce human insulin in bacteria. In 1982, genetically engineered insulin was approved by the FDA for use by diabetics. Insulin is normally produced by the pancreas. And for more than 50 years the pancreas of slaughtered animals such as swine or sheep was used as an insulin source. To provide a reliable source of human insulin, researchers harvested the insulin gene from cellular DNA. Researchers made a copy of DNA carrying this insulin gene and spliced it into a bacterium. When the bacterium was cultured, the microbe split from 1 cell into 2 cells. And both cells got a copy of the insulin gene. Those 2 microbes grew, then divided into 4. Those 4 into 8, the 8 into 16, and so forth. With each cell division, the 2 new cells each had a copy of the gene for human insulin. and because the cells had a copy of the genetic recipe card for insulin. They could make the insulin protein. Using genetic engineering to produce insulin was both cheaper and safer for patients. As some patients were allergic to insulin from other animals.
What is a reading frame?
The reading frame is the 3-nucleotide section of the mRNA molecule that is read by tRNA during translation. Normally, the reading frame matches the codon, but mutations that cause the gain or loss of nucleotides can result in the offsetting of the reading frame, leading to the production of a very different protein. For example, a sentence comprised of 3-letter words changes its meaning with the deletion of one letter. The big fat cat ate one red rat. Delete the first letter E and the sentence becomes THBIGFATC at a tetrahedrat, which effectively is nonsense.
Do all starfishes, or sea stars, have 5 arms?
Starfishes, or sea stars, are members of the class Asteroidea. Their bodies consist of a central disk from which radiate from 5 to more than 20 arms or rays.
What is a mermaid's purse?
Mermaids' purses are the protective cases in which the eggs of dogfish, skates, and rays are released into the environment. The rectangular purse is leathery and has long tendrils streaming from each corner. The tendrils anchor the case to seaweed or rocks, where the case is protected during the 6 to 9 months it takes for the embryos to hatch. Empty cases often wash up on beaches.
What are the 4 levels of structural organization in animals?
Every animal has 4 levels of hierarchical organization: cell, tissue, organ, and organ system. Each level in the hierarchy is of increasing complexity, and all organ systems work together to form an organism.
What is the largest invertebrate?
The largest invertebrate is the giant squid, Archaeopteryx ducks, which averages 30 to 53 feet, 9 to 16 m, in length including its tentacles. It may reach a length of 69 feet 21 meters. These animals have the largest eyes, up to 10 in, 25 centimeters, in diameter, in the animal kingdom. It is believed that they generally live on or near the ocean bottom at a depth of 3,281 feet. 1,000 m, or slightly more than a half-mile below the surface of the sea.
Do humans show grooming behavior similar to that of other primates?
Grooming is an important tool in cementing social relationships among primates. In studies of non-human primates, grooming, which is used ostensibly to remove external or ectoparasites, most often occurs between close relatives. In humans, grooming is also used as a relationship builder. Although humans will groom non-relatives as well.
What are the main types of receptors?
Receptor cells are cells that receive stimuli. Each type of receptor responds to a particular stimulus. The 5 main types of receptors are pain receptors, thermoreceptors, mechanoreceptors, chemoreceptors, and electromagnetic receptors. Pain receptors are probably found in all animals. However, it is difficult to understand non-human perception of pain. Pain often indicates danger, and the animal or individual retreats to safety. Thermoreceptors in the skin are sensitive to changes in temperature. Thermoreceptors in the brain monitor the temperature of the blood to maintain proper body temperature. Mechanoreceptors are sensitive to touch and pressure, sound waves, and gravity. The sense of hearing relies on mechanoreceptors. Chemoreceptors are responsible for taste and smell. Electromagnetic receptors are sensitive to energy of various wavelengths including electricity, magnetism, and light. The most common types of electromagnetic receptors are photoreceptors that detect light and control vision.
How can genes become rearranged?
Any rearrangement within a gene is a mutation. And such rearrangement is usually due to a random genetic accident. The mutation can be harmless and simply add to the variation within an organism's genome. Or it can be harmful with dire consequences.
What are producers and consumers?
Producers and consumers are terms used to describe the different roles played by species within ecosystems. Producers are those who fix energy, that is, they take energy from one source and convert it into a form. Their biomass, that makes it accessible to others within the system, the consumers. Consumer levels are numbered according to their reliance on producers as a main source of energy. So primary consumers are those that rely heavily on producers, while secondary and tertiary, and even quaternary, consumers exploit other consumers as their preferred energy sources.
Why does eating chocolate make some people feel good?
Chocolate contains over 300 known chemicals, some of which can alter mood, such as caffeine. Chocolate also contains a small amount of the chemical phenylethylamine, P, a stimulant to the nervous system that makes people feel more alert and gives a sense of overall well-being.
Is it possible to eliminate fat cells permanently?
Current evidence suggests that the original number of fat cells in any area of the body is controlled by one's genetic makeup. People who lose fat mass through diet and exercise do not lose fat cells. Rather, the fat cells atrophy. Although fat cells may be removed by liposuction, studies have suggested that liposuction does not effectively control weight. Surgical removal of fat cells only removes about 10% or less of fat cells in the body.
What toxic substances are produced by mushrooms?
The most toxic substances produced by mushrooms are amatoxins and phallotoxins, both cyclopeptides. These toxins act by interfering with RNA and DNA transcription, inhibiting the formation of new cells. The toxins collect in the liver, ultimately leading to liver failure.
Why do lemmings rush to the sea?
Lemmings are a type of rodent whose plague behavior has been studied for decades. Every 4 years or so, lemming populations in Canada explode to the point where fur trappers describe the tundra as being alive with the little brown mice. In fact, the population density varies from less than 20 mice per hectare, 2.5 acres, in some years to as many as 200 in that same space the next year. What is puzzling to scientists is that while it is possible to observe this population boom firsthand, the impetus for the growth and rapid decline. The population drops again within a few months, has not yet been determined. Although it has been documented that these population explosions cause an overconsumption of the available food, there is no evidence that such overcrowding can cause the lemmings to become suicidal, or even incredibly thirsty, and rush en masse into the sea. Instead, the lemming migrations begin slowly with small groups traveling at night, and gradually build so that animals travel in larger groups in the daytime. They tend to avoid water but will swim if necessary. Lemmings can cross a 656 feet 200 meters body of water on a calm night, but most will drown on a windy night, which may be the source of the myth.
Do animals marry?
It is estimated that 90% of bird species are monogamous, that is, one male mates with one female to produce offspring. Some of these pair bonds may actually extend beyond a single mating season and so could be considered a form of marriage. The type of pair bonds a species will form is dependent on their ecological niche and is heavily influenced by the needs of their offspring. Altricial offspring, which require large amounts of parental care for survival, like humans, demand the efforts of two parents and therefore are more likely to be found in monogamous species.
What are the steps to prepare a specimen for examination?
The three basic steps to prepare a specimen are fixation, preservation, staining, and mounting. Preservation prevents destruction or decay of the specimen as well as inhibiting microbiological growth. Different stains and dyes attach to different parts of a cell, such as the nucleus. Specimens are mounted in a medium that is also a preservative and often covered with a cover slip.
Why do we have seasons?
Seasons are due to two factors: 1, Earth's inclination on its axis, and 2, the distance of Earth from the Sun. Making days longer for the hemisphere that is tilted away from the Sun during any given period.
Who was the first to use the word prion?
In a paper Stanley Prusiner, 1942, wrote in 1982, he used the term prion in place of the expression proteinaceous infectious particle when describing an infectious agent. Prusiner was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1997.
How are mushrooms grown commercially?
The most common, commercially grown mushroom is the white button mushroom, Agaricus bisporus. Mushroom farms consist of special planting beds in buildings with temperature and humidity conditions that are controlled. The beds contain soil mixed with a material that is rich in organic matter. The beds are inoculated with mushroom spawn, a pure culture of the mushroom fungus grown in large bottles on an organic-rich medium. The mycelium grows and spreads throughout the soil mixture for several weeks. Mushroom formation is induced by adding a layer of casing soil to the surface of the bed. Mushrooms appear on the surface of the bed through a process known as a flash. Mushrooms must be collected immediately after flashing, while they are still fresh.
How many Golgi bodies are in a cell?
Protists contain one or a small number of Golgi bodies. Animal cells may contain 20 or more Golgi bodies, while plant cells may contain several hundred Golgi bodies.
What are root hairs?
Root hairs are tiny projections and outgrowths on the outermost layer of the root epidermis. They occur near the tips of roots, where they are abundant. Root hairs are short-lived, and new ones are produced at approximately the same rate as older ones die. Some plants have as many as 40,000 root hairs per square centimeter.
What are the main components of the cell wall in plants?
The cell wall is one of the features of plant cells that distinguishes them from animal cells. The wall protects the plant cell and maintains its shape. The cell wall consists mainly of cellulose microfibrils embedded in a matrix of protein and sugar polymers.
Why do animals pretend to be hurt?
Among bird watchers, the female killdeer is well known for pretending to be hurt. When a potential predator appears within the vicinity of her nest, the killdeer will adopt a posture of wing dragging, making it appear that she is injured and an easy catch. The female will gradually lead the predator away from her nest, eventually flying off when the predator is at a safe distance from the nest.
Will wild birds reject baby birds that have been touched by humans?
No. Contrary to popular belief, birds generally will not reject hatchlings touched by human hands. The best thing to do for newborn birds that have fallen or have been pushed out of the nest is to locate the nest as quickly as possible and gently put them back.
What are the main organs of the digestive system and their function?
The digestive system includes the mouth, alimentary canal, or gastrovascular cavity, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and anus. The mouth is the opening through which food is ingested. In animals with a second opening for elimination, the digestive system contains an alimentary canal, a tube allowing for the passage of food from the mouth to the anus. In contrast, animals with only one opening have a gastrovascular cavity that serves as the site of digestive activities. The esophagus is another channel through which food passes on the way to the stomach. The stomach, or crop in certain species, such as birds, stores food and is the primary site of chemical digestion. following digestion in the stomach where food is broken down with acid and enzymes. The food passes into the small intestine. Nutrients are absorbed via the intestine. Much shorter than the small intestine, though greater in diameter, is the large intestine, also called the colon. Here, the solid material remaining after digestion is compacted and then eliminated via the anus.
What are Operation Ranch Hand and Agent Orange?
Operation Ranch Hand was the tactical military project for the aerial spraying of herbicides in South Vietnam during the Vietnam conflict, 1961 to 1975. In these operations, Agent Orange, the collective name for the herbicides 2,4-D and 2,4,5-T, was used for the defoliation. The name derives from the color-coded drums in which the herbicides were stored. In all, U.S. troops sprayed approximately 19 million gallons, 72 million liters, of herbicides over 4 million acres, 1.6 million hectare. Concerns about the health effects of Agent Orange were initially voiced in 1970. And since then the issue has been complicated by scientific and political debate. In 1993 a 16-member panel of experts reviewed the existing scientific evidence and found strong evidence of a statistical association between herbicides and soft tissue sarcoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Hodgkin's disease, and chloracne. On the other hand, the panel concluded that no connection appeared to exist between exposure to Agent Orange and skin cancer, bladder cancer, brain tumors, or stomach cancer.
What is the most abundant group of organisms?
The eubacteria are the most abundant group of organisms on Earth. More living eubacteria inhabit the human mouth than the total number of mammals living on Earth.
What group of animals was the first to make a partial transition from water to land?
Amphibians have made a partial transition to terrestrial life. The living amphibians include newts, salamanders, frogs, and toads. Although lungfish made a partial transition to living out of the water, amphibians were the first to struggle onto land and become adapted to a life of breathing air while not constantly surrounded by water.
How do cells move?
Not all cells move, those that do move exhibit distinct body features and methods for inducing movement. Cells with flagella, such as sperm, move by whipping the flagellum back and forth. Several protists, example paramecia, have cilia which are much smaller than flagella that produce movement by shifting. through liquid in a way that is similar to how an oar can be used to propel a boat through water. Pseudopodia, often referred to as fake feet, are cellular extensions caused by a stretching of the cell membrane. Pseudopodia are used by amoebae, protists, for movement and acquiring prey. Macrophages, white blood cells that play an important role in the immune system of human beings, use pseudopodia to attack and devour invading microbes.
How does a bulb differ from a corm, a tuber, and a rhizome?
Each of these structures is a modified stem that grows below ground. Many times the term bulb is applied to any underground storage organ in which a plant stores energy for its dormant period. Dormancy is a device a plant utilizes to get through difficult weather conditions. Winter cold or summer drought. A true bulb consists of fleshy scales containing a small basal plate, a modified stem from which the roots emerge, and a shoot. The scales that surround the embryo are modified leaves that contain the nutrients for the bulb during dormancy and early growth. Some bulbs have a tunic, a paper-thin covering, around the scales. The basal plate can also hold the scales together. New bulbs form from the lateral buds on the basal plate. Tulips, daffodils, lilies, and hyacinths are examples of bulb flowers. A corm is actually a stem that has been modified into a mass of storage tissue. The eye or eyes at the top of the corm are growing points. The corm is covered by dry leaf bases similar to the tunic covering of the bulb. Roots grow from the basal plate on the underside of the corm. New corms form on top of or beside the old one. Corm-type flowers include gladiolus, freesia, and crocus. A tuber is a solid underground mass of stem like a corm, but it lacks both a basal plate and a tunic. Roots and shoots grow from eyes, growth buds, out of its sides, bottom, and sometimes its top. Some tubers are roundish. Others are flattened and lumpy. Some examples of tubers are gloxinia, caladium, ranunculuses, and anemone. A tuberous root is a swollen root that has taken in moisture and nutrients. It resembles a tuber. New growth occurs on the base of the old stem, where it joins the root. A tuberous root can be divided by cutting off a section with an eye-bearing portion from where the old stem was attached. Dahlias have tuberous roots. A rhizome or a rootstock is a thickened, branching storage stem that usually grows laterally along or slightly below the soil surface. Roots develop downward on the bottom surface, while buds and leaves sprout upwards from the top of the rhizome. A rhizome is propagated by cutting the parent plant into sections. Japanese, Siberian, and bearded irises, cannas, calla lilies, and trilliums are rhizomes.
What are the macronutrients and micronutrients of plants?
The macronutrients of plants are carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, potassium, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, and sulfur. These all are nearly or in some cases far greater than 1% of the dry weight of a plant. The micronutrients are iron, chlorine, copper, manganese, zinc, molybdenum, and boron. Each of the micronutrients constitutes less than 1 to several hundred parts per million in plants. Sodium, silicon, cobalt, and selenium are beneficial elements. Research has not shown that these elements are essential for plant growth and development.
What is biogeography?
Biogeography is the study of the distribution, both current and past, of individual species in specific environments. One of the first biogeographers was Carolus Linnaeus, 1707 to 1778. A Swedish botanist who studied the distribution of plants. Biogeography specifically addresses the questions of evolution, extinction, and dispersal of organisms in specific ecosystems.
Do all animals use imprinting?
Imprinting is a prime example of the relative influence of nature, genes, and nurture, environment, on behavior. The organism is born with a sketchy outline of an object, parent, reproductive partner, drawn from its genetic component, and this is then filled in by its experiences in the environment. Therefore, while not all species have been found to meet the scientific definition of imprinting, it is highly likely that all animals will exhibit at least some behaviors that combine genetic and environmental influences.
How can biotechnology be used to manufacture vaccines?
Vaccine development is risky using conventional methods because vaccines must be manufactured inside living organisms, and the diseases themselves are extremely dangerous and infectious. Using genetic engineering, specific pathogen proteins that trigger antibody production are isolated and inserted into a bacterial or fungal vector. The organisms are then cultured to produce large quantities of the protein.
What are more recently discovered chemical regulators of plant growth?
Scientists have recently discovered that plants also react to growth regulators other than the 5 major classes of plant hormones.
What is the oldest genus of living trees?
The genus Ginkgo, commonly known as maidenhair trees, comprises the oldest living trees. This genus is native to China, where it has been cultivated for centuries. It has not been found in the wild, and it is likely that it would have become extinct had it not been cultivated. Fossils of 200-million-year-old ginkgos show that the modern-day ginkgo is nearly identical to its forerunner. As of the early 21st century, only one living species of ginkgo remains, Ginkgo biloba. The fleshy coverings of the seeds produced by females of the species G. biloba have a distinctly foul odor. Horticulturists prefer to cultivate the male plant from shoots to avoid the odor and mess created by the female tree.
What is the Gaia hypothesis?
The Gaia hypothesis, named for Gaia, the earth goddess of ancient Greece, is a controversial idea that the world is a single living organism that is capable of self-maintenance and regulation. It was first proposed by James Lovelock, 1919, and Lynn Margulis, 1938. In 1974, many scientists regard it as a useful analogy but a difficult theory to test scientifically.
Are bacterial cell walls different from plant cell walls?
Cell walls in prokaryotes, e.g., bacteria and plants define the cell's shape and give rigidity to the cell. Unlike plant cell walls, bacterial cell walls consist mainly of peptidoglycans and not cellulose. Peptidoglycans are polysaccharide chains, amino sugars, cross-linked by small peptides.
What is microscopic autoradiography?
Microscopic autoradiography is a technique used to localize radioactive molecules within cells. It utilizes photographic emulsion to determine where a specific radioactive compound is located within a cell at the time the cell is fixed and sectioned for microscopy.
Can one type of fat be changed into another type?
The process of hydrogenation can convert an unsaturated fatty acid into a hydrogenated fatty acid. This process, which is achieved by adding extra hydrogen atoms to unsaturated fat, has become both a bane and a blessing. Hydrogenation is the process that allows unsaturated vegetable oils to be turned into margarine. This method prevents oxidation, and thus rancidity, and has allowed for the development of foods with less animal and saturated fats. However, the consumption of hydrogenated fatty acids may be linked to increased risk of heart disease, because the fats cause a change in the structure of targeted unsaturated fatty acids. The consumption of trans fats has been shown to slightly Increase the levels of bad cholesterol, LDL, in the blood.
What is the Darwin Award?
The most popular award by that name is a humorous award given posthumously to those who improve the human gene pool by removing themselves from it.
What is a calorie?
There are actually two kinds of calories. Ask a chemist and you will learn that a calorie, with a lowercase c, is the amount of energy, heat, required to raise 1 gr, 1 ml, of water by 1 degree Celsius. A nutritionist, on the other hand, would describe a big C or kilocalorie. Kcal, the amount of energy required to raise 1 kilogram, 1 L, of water by 1 degree Celsius. The kcal is the unit used to describe the energy value in food. For example, if a chocolate chip cookie is completely incinerated, the amount of heat energy released would be enough to raise the temperature of 1 L of water by approximately 300 degrees Celsius. However, as this system adheres to the laws of thermodynamics, the conversion is not totally efficient. Only about 25% of energy actually performs cellular work.
How do chromoplasts differ from chloroplasts?
Chromoplasts are pigment-containing plastids found in plants. They are responsible for the characteristic red, orange, or yellow coloration visible in some flowers, fruits, and plants.
Do all cells divide at the same rate?
No, all cells do not divide at the same rate. Cells that require frequent replenishing, such as skin or intestinal cells, may only take roughly 12 hours to complete a cell cycle. Other cells, such as liver cells, remain in a resting state. Interphase, for up to a year before undergoing division. There are also cells that exist for a lifetime in a non-dividing state. An example of which would be human brain cells.